Peace. You're now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Harut, and this is another Cosmic Convos reaction. All right. Now, this time we're going to review or react to another video that someone sent me from a popular platform called Quartz about astrology not being a science, but I guess it's supposed to have some good information about what, might be true about a horoscope or whatnot, all right? But before we get into this particular reaction, I want to remind you to make sure that you subscribe to this channel, like and subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you can know when we're going live. And without further ado, let's get into it.
People talk a lot of shit about astrology.
It has no foundation in cosmic reality.
Is astrology a big part of your life, Seth?
I think it's a bunch of bull.
And
before we get rolling, man, Neil deGrasse Tyson, man. Hey, shout out to that brother, man. Amazing astrophysicist, have made a lot of contributions, but yeah, man, I'm not too happy with his statements on astrology or whatnot. And the main thing, kind of like what I said in the video about with the astronomers versus the astrologers or whatnot, they don't take the same level of rigor and understanding astrology that they did to get their qualifications to be an astrophysicist, to be an astronomer and such. So, it's kind of disingenuous, but, let's keep rolling. But shout out to that brother.
they've got a point. We came up with astrology ages ago, back when science meant looking up at the stars and making up stories. Astrology isn't science, but it is something lots of people identify with and use to explain their feelings, their issues.
Why do they always say that so definitively? They're like, astrology isn't a science, but they never go on to tell you why that's true. They never provide any justification for why they say that astrology is not a science and whatnot. Man, you guys got to start pressing these people a little bit more.
Their relationships.
Fundamentally, astrology is a way of talking about who you are and how you relate to other people.
And astrology may even be more than that. Once upon a time, astrology was really useful for science. And maybe science could still learn a lot from astrology, even if you think it's bullshit.
Might have some fairness on this
Once
one.
upon a
Let's see.
time, astrologers were scientists. The ancient Babylonians were clever enough to notice that stars moved in patterns, and they seemed to affect daily life. The moon seemed to control everything from the tide.
So one other misconception, right? Again, we're so Western centric, so fixated on what's happening in America, which, I mean, if you live here, then that's what you care about, or in the UK or places like that, right? That's the only thing we think about when we think about astrology, right? A lot of people don't realize that India, honestly has, we practice Vedic astrology on this channel. So, a lot of people in India that practice astrology, a lot of them are physicists. A lot of them are engineers, electrical engineer, computer engineers, scientists of all different disciplines and whatnot. So, it's just that in the West, astrology has been removed from astronomy or has been isolated from being a science. But in other cultures that still are present today, still relevant, still making noise in the world or whatnot, scientists have a strong respect for astrology and vice versa. All right, let's keep it going.
To women's periods. It also just got really hot outside when the sun was in a constellation that looked like a crab. Well, sort of like a crab. Maybe the Babylonians figured they could resolve the chaos on Earth if they understood the stars better. So they started collecting data and using that data to tell stories. They actually became really good at predicting things like a...
And another thing, there's a Western bias here. Okay? Why? Because they're fixated on the Babylonians. Okay? They're not the only ones who developed the science. I would say they probably are not the first ones to develop the science. But again, it's being Western centric. And that's, like with our podcast, shout out to Brother Rob, my brother, or whatnot. What we're doing with our podcast is we are bringing you understand, sidereal astrology, Vedic astrology to the Western world, and even, mainly the black world. We black, black people tend to watch, people from their own culture and different things like that, because it's something that has been ignored, been mischaracterized by other, Western astrologers that may or may not understand Vedic astrology, or just trying to defend their system and where they come from or whatnot. But this story is this particular video is going down kind of that same pipeline of Western astrology, and how, Western astrologers, tropical astrologers, like to, characterize astrology and its origins. But let's keep it going.
Eclipses. Of course, they thought eclipses were omens, and they only cared about predicting them so they could protect their kings from the angry gods. Side note, if the ancient Babylonians wanted to trick a god out of killing their king, they'd hide the king, appoint a fake king in his place, then sacrifice the fake king. The real king survived every time, we think. The truth, though, is that the ancient Babylonians were doing incredible astronomy for their time. Astrology was driving scientific discovery, and this was just the beginning. 2,000 years later, ancient people in Greece, and maybe India,
again. Come on, man. Again, just like I said, look, I'm watching this. This is my first time watching this video, right? Someone sent it to me, and I'm just now watching it live right here. So this is a real reaction or whatnot. Again, Western bias, okay? 2,000 years later, Greeks and maybe India, okay? There's evidence, okay? Physical evidence of astrology being practiced in cultures thousands of years before the Greeks. Okay, all right. Ancient Egypt. Go listen to our our different podcasts on the ages, on the astrological ages, and in particular the age of Taurus. You see this in there. I think. What other age of Aries, we talk about it, but specifically in the age of Taurus, we really spend a lot of time talking about the different changes in the architecture, marking that our ancestors in ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, was saying that we were in this particular age. And you can see it in the architecture, and you can see it in the king's names, what they appended on their names, and the names that they took on, and different things like that. It reflected the astrological age that we were in or whatnot. So this is, again, disingenuous, Western bias, but I'm gonna check it out some more and see what they got to say. We might watch this whole one because it's not that long.
Discovered the Earth revolves like a gyroscope. This movement is called precession, and it happens incredibly slowly. But astrology required such precise observations. These people were able to notice that the Earth is, in fact, revolving on a cycle that takes tens of thousands of years to complete. The fact that they noticed this is pretty incredible. A lot of these astrologers probably understood astronomy better than most of us do today. And the discovery of precession changed astrology, too. Western astrology started correlating sun signs to the seasons, instead of to the stars. It's why your sun sign is tied to the time of year you were born. That means if you were born in the beginning of summer, you'd be a Cancer, regardless of where the crab constellation actually is in the sky.
Again, this is the stark difference between Vedic, sidereal astrology, and tropical astrology. I'm gonna see where he's going with this. They already kind of started with kind of like the Western astrology bias into this, so I'm gonna see where they're going. But yeah, precession. This is a very important aspect of astrology, right? If you don't know, if you're coming from the world of Western astrology, when you say that a particular planet is in this sign, it doesn't correlate to what's actually happening in the sky. Okay, so just like he just stated, that basically they fixated the constellation that matches about, interesting enough, it matches around 2,000 or some years ago when the Greeks were introduced to the science. There's a lot of speculation of why they operate on a fixed system. Some people say that they did it on purpose because I guess they thought that keeping the oriented to zodiac fixated to that one particular time was more effective. There are others that believe that they didn't really understand it, right? There was a piece of the information that they didn't get, and they just decided to continue on with the error instead of making the correction. I'm not going to say which way that I actually believe on that, but all I know is now is that, if you look at, the predictions that a lot of people make in Western astrology, a lot of times the real effective Western astrologers, they tend to focus on making predictions based on aspects, meaning how the planets are relating to each other, versus making predictions utilizing signs and rulerships and different things like that. So I noticed that. I know some Western astrologers might disagree with me, but we could talk about it. That's what this platform here for. Like I said, I'm not like dissing anybody. I'm just presenting the information and going off of that or whatnot based on experiences from other cultures or whatnot, other astrologers and other ways to practice the science or whatnot. But go ahead. You got some comments about this? You disagree? Go ahead and put it in the comment section. I'm not opposed to having this conversation with anybody, all right?
Astrology had evolved with science, but astrology had a problem. Astrology was all built around the idea that the sun, the planets, and all the stars revolved around Earth. And as science started suggesting otherwise, the astrologers made a bad bet and doubled down. Astrologers started ignoring science. Enter the scientific
See. He did it. Boom. This is my first time watching this. I promise you I have not watched this video before. He hit it right on the nail's head or whatnot. But he wasn't specific. What he said was astrologers, but he should have been specific and said Western tropical astrologers started to ignore signs, okay? But you don't see this same practice in India, okay? So they need to be more specific. You don't see this with the Dogons in Mali, okay? You don't see this divergence, all right? So I'm glad, shout out to them for pointing that out, even though he wasn't, precise enough, but shout out to them for doing that or whatnot, indeed.
revolution. With new tools, like telescopes, scientists were redefining the way we understood the universe. But not everyone was on board. For years, Europe's last official court astrologer tried to defend astrology. It didn't go well. It got so bad, he started openly predicting the deaths of former friends. Scientists made him a public laughingstock to convince the rest of Europe that astrology wasn't real science.
See, that's that arrogance, man. Like I said, sometimes, people when presented with new information and they're so firm, got their heels dug in on what they believe, and not being scientific. Because being a scientist, right, operating in the realm of science, it's all about, research, and you're always refining things. You're learning how to do things better. We may understand how to engineer a building in certain ways that we did 50 years ago or 100 years ago. We learn different things. You have to build on the science, right? I kind of see that same kind of energy today, right? A lot of people, when presented, look, before I even go down that path, I mean, if you grew up in the West, 9 times out of 10, you've only heard of Western astrology, right? So you're interested in it, it sounds cool, and a lot of people start digging into the science, start trying to learn different things and stuff like that. But, when presented with a new system that, has some elements to it that may make it more accurate, right? You may appear, you see in this, you see that, oh, there is an astrology system that actually does match what's going on in the sky, and it's been practiced for thousands of years prior to Western astrology. You would think that'd make someone curious and start, dig into it some more. But oftentimes you see a lot of people that just dig in and start justifying why they still practice the science and start getting real, inventive, and start, coming with all this colorful, flowery language. Like, it's whatever one resonates with you. It's, it's the one that, you feel in your spirit, or the one that you can, feel like you relate to more. All of this type of talk is unscientific, right? Your chart is your chart. So if you have a problem with the chart, it might be more of a just not, wanting to look at the reality of it versus, it being incorrect, right? It's like the problem is the chart, not me, that type of thing and stuff like that. So I see that even in today, when it comes to when we're talking about the two sciences, and then it's kind of like almost like a scapegoat when someone just says, well, it's whatever one resonates with you, instead of sitting and wanting to deal with the actual facts of the two systems and then really doing a fair evaluation of them and stuff like that. And, there's some good people out there that didn't do that. Like, shout out to Joni Patrice. She talks about it a lot. It's a good astrologer out there. She's on YouTube and different things like that. She talks about it a lot, how she converted from being a Western astrologer for years, and she had success, but when she learned about Vedic astrology, she was interested more in the truth. So she rolled with that, and she's been a Vedic astrologer ever since. So, that's just something to keep in mind. Don't be opposed to, new ideas just because they're different than what you already know or whatnot. Always stay open, and always stay fixated on knowing, not believing. Right? Knowing, having knowledge, not belief, okay?
Around the same time, a college student named Isaac Newton went to the local fair and picked up an astrology book. It didn't make sense to him, but he wanted to understand it better. So he started studying mathematics, and eventually discovered that physics could explain the connections between Earth and the stars far better than astrology ever could. Astrology lost.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. I don't know about
Today, astrology is still something scientists like to make fun of. But astrology is still a popular way to understand the universe. More than 40% of Americans think astrology is at least sort of scientific. But astrologers themselves aren't very good at explaining how. One astrologer tried to tell me that quantum entanglement could explain astrology. Astrology is especially well suited to the way we communicate on the internet. From memes, to horoscopes, to personality quizzes. Astrology has taken over web culture. It's also taking over the apps on your phone.
We were completely floored by how much response we got.
That's Banu Gular, co-founder of CoStar, a new social astrology app. CoStar takes NASA data on stars and planets and turns them into personalized predictions based on algorithms tuned by professional astrologers. Gular says it doesn't actually matter if people believe in astrology. The better question, she says, is whether it helps people.
That's kind of a cop-out.
CoStar was really popular from the moment it launched,
Let's see.
rising to one of the most popular lifestyle apps in the App Store. It's hit download rates of nearly 1,000 an hour. Gular has a theory about why.
On social media or whatever, everyone's got this really polished version of themselves, but using astrology, they're having really earnest conversations about who they are and what kinds of people they love and which kinds of people break their hearts and why they're having a emotional hard time. Having even a language to talk about these things with just gives people a way to do that.
See? That's the problem, right? That's the problem, right? And so instead of trying to reconcile, why are scientists able to shoot down my astrological claim so easily, okay? Why do these group of astrologers come at it this way? And then when we're debating about this, or when you're looking at the differences between the two, I don't try to figure out, where there could be possible flaws in the system that I practice, or there could be differences that may not be as, effective, in predicting and analyzing people and different things. Instead of doing that, you kind of pivot and turn it into something else, almost like a coping, mechanism. It's like, almost like ignorance is bliss. And, we have the language to speak about these particular things. But if it's wrong, it's wrong. It's a lot of nonsense, out there being manufactured about astrology. And honestly, it hurts. It does more to hurt the science than help it, because people think that they know something about astrology, and then they start, you meet somebody and they know your what month you were born in, and they think that they know something, but you don't know anything from that information, right? You can't. There's people who are born next day from each other, hours away from each other, that are completely different, right? They might have something in common, but they're usually very different. They have different career paths. They have different mate choices. So it goes against our own experience to function this way, And like I said, like I've heard of that app. Shout out to them for having an app or whatnot. But again, it's the problem. It's the problem, right? And the concept of this pre-manufactured horoscope is a problem, right? You can get some general information if you know a couple things. If that you can manufacture from a chart. You can give some general information, but really, a horoscope, it's not that accurate, right? You really have to sit down with an actual astrologer or whatnot to actually get what you need to know to be able to make accurate predictions. Or you need to learn the science of astrology and be able to know how to look at a chart and make predictions based on that, okay? So that, a lot of these different things, they're cool, they're good to utilize, sometimes, but a lot of it causes way more harm than good. And it keeps a lot of people from, working with a very, a serious science, a science that can, it's a useful tool. You're a business person or whatnot. You're raising children, different things like that. Like when my daughter was born or whatnot, shout out to my daughter, drop a bomb for state drop. But, when my daughter was born, at the moment, she took that first breath, I clocked the time, and me, I go and I put in, I'm looking at the chart and I already know how she's going to function. I predicted when she started walking, when she was going to start walking. You understand what I'm saying? You can look at these different things and utilize this science in a major way. But again, all of these, meme culture, social media gets a hold of it and just starts messing it up. You understand what I'm saying? It's entertaining, it's funny, but you're watering down a very useful, very actually key component of society. You know what I mean? Civilizations, when you're, looking at when you want to have children, what kind of placements and different things are coming up. So you can, you can coordinate that, you can, know, hey, if I'm going to start this business, if you're looking at the cycles, looking at the chart of the country that you live in, hey, the financial system's going to be kind of messed up right now, or this kind of industry is going to be down. So maybe I don't start my business at this particular time, or maybe I can capitalize off the downturn. This is how you use this stuff or whatnot. But, let me continue on.
People don't love astrology because it's scientific. They love it because it's a powerful social tool. But maybe astrology can describe more than our emotional well-being and how we relate to others. Actually, some scientists are trying to figure out exactly how much of astrology is grounded in physical reality. And they're doing some legitimate research. Dr. Russell Foster is a circadian neuroscientist at the University of Oxford. And he says there's something about astrology that is actually pretty scientific.
At its basic level, astrology is saying that when you're born will influence your biology.
Foster has spent years studying how the seasons affect who
it's
you
more
are.
Than that.
It's one of astrology's core ideas. And he says there's real science to back it up.
We got to push, and it's something I think me and Rob was talking about this or whatnot. We got to push this. They keep referring to astrology and they're, inferring that, Western astrology. We got to get rid of that. You understand what I'm saying? And even like, on apps, like if you're on, Snapchat or something like that, they automatically put your sun sign in there. Like, we need everybody's talking about inclusion or whatnot. Include the OG astrology science or whatnot, man. Let you choose whether you want your Vedic placement to show or the Western placement to show and stuff like that, and stop being so, elitist or whatever. Astrology, well, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Western astrology. No, Vedic astrology has been practiced for way longer. You understand what I'm saying? Sidereal astrology has been around way longer. So why even do that or whatnot? So I guess, part of what we're doing with this platform is trying to get it to that level as well. And a lot of people have been beating, kind of beating the drum. Shout out to Kapil Raj, KRS channel, different people like that. They really, kind of did something different with the Vedic astrology or YouTube and social media and stuff like that, and really has spread the word throughout the world a lot more. So shout out to them. But let's continue this on. I'm interested to hear what this research is going on, but it sounds like the research is based on the Western concept of astrology, but let's see where they land.
For instance, schizophrenia is more common for people born during January, February, and March. Seasonal affective disorder is more common among people born in March and April.
It could be changes in your mother's physiology, depending upon when you were conceived, or the sort of signals that the mother gave you after birth as a result of feeding on breast milk. There is absolutely a statistical impact of when you were born on a whole range of our different parameters.
When you're born can affect everything from your lifespan to your height and weight. Your birth season can influence your personality, and even your likelihood of developing an eating disorder or mental illness. Astrologers have always believed some version of that. The stars and...
It's not the birth season, though. I'm gonna look this up. If somebody has it readily available, go ahead and post like a link or something like that in the comment section. But I'm gonna look at this because, from my own practice and everything like that, I don't see that pattern. Not from the seasons utilizing them in a Western sense. Now, like I've always said, I practice Baz, which is a 4 pillars astrology from China or whatnot, that I use with feng shui and different things like that. Baz would be a better way to explain that because, it doesn't confuse the nomenclature, right? When you're talking about constellations, but you're ignoring the constellations, you're confusing people, right? It's like in the other video where the astronomers were going against the astrologers. They shouldn't even be talking to Western astrologers because they've decided to forego. They don't even look at the constellations. They're just basically leveraging the constellations when they were fixated about 2,000 some odd years ago during the age of Aries, right? And they just kind of leveraged that to basically call them seasons or whatnot. And it's really a different science, to be quite honest with you. It's not the same. What tropical astrologers and Vedic astrologers are doing are not the same. Okay, but they're confusing people because they're still using similar language, right, in regards to zodiac signs or constellations and different things like that. It's confusing people, but I think Baz is a better way to explain a seasonal impact on people or whatnot. But I want to look at that study. I will hope that it publishes birth data, and maybe we can I'll calculate these charts and see what see a connection, right? They should publish that. If they're gonna put that out, they should publish the birth data. Maybe leave the people anonymous, just say what kind of health elements they got, and let me see if I can see how that how that's manifesting in the Baz system and in the Vedic astrology system or whatnot.
And our bodies all follow natural rhythms. And actually, that idea has made astrology an important medical tool for centuries. This story starts around 500 years ago.
Astrology and medicine had a long, long marriage.
That's Dr. Lauren Cassell, a philosophy of science lecturer at the University of Cambridge. Cassell studies some of the earliest surviving medical casebooks, written around the year 1600. Medical records written by doctors using astrology. At the time, lots of doctors didn't actually write things down. they would simply treat patients on the spot based on their most obvious symptoms. But doctors who used astrology did things differently. They had to draw astrological charts, and in the process, they wrote down lots of information about the patient. And they used all that information to make medical predictions, sort of like doctors do today.
They could use astrology as a diagnostic to try to work out how the timing of the illness would then foretell what was going to happen next in the disease. Because the art of prognostication is what doctors do.
Medical predictions based on astrology probably didn't lead to the best health outcomes. But medical astrology led to some of the earliest surviving medical journals, which methodically tracked patient symptoms. And that's a practice central to modern medicine. And Cassell says there's another practice modern doctors might want to take from those medical astrologers. The 17th century doctors Cassell studies treated patients using remarkable amounts of information, from bodily functions to family histories to the positions of the stars. Today, modern medicine is also learning to embrace complexity. That's especially true in what's called individualized medicine, where doctors study their patients down to the genetic level to design treatments for them specifically.
As we move into
That's a fact. That's one of the strengths of astrology is to be able to specify, right? To be able to individualize people. There are Western astrologers that do practice this way, right? But the loud majority of people out there speaking, it's not really, they're not specifying, right? You picked the sun sign and you're focused on the sun sign or whatnot, but you can't specify people that way or whatnot. So I'm listening to them, and there's some good. This is a fair video to a certain degree. There's some generalizations, there's some liberties, taken in and stuff like that. But it's not that bad or whatnot. But yeah, that's astrology gives us a way to look at an individual and see how their destiny, how their life kind of lines up and different things like that. See their track, see their personality or whatnot, the type of things that they're attracted to, the things that they're good at or whatnot. And then also you can also leverage it from a medical sense as well or whatnot. But the better way to do that is that, of course, have accurate time of birth. And the ascendant, understanding that ascendant and having that accurate, it just opens up the world for you. You understand, as far as being able to apply astrology in a bunch of different ways and whatnot. Let's keep it going.
individual medicine, I think there are lessons that it can learn from an older kind of medicine to actually say the complex number of factors that contribute to any single person's health and whatever illnesses they may suffer from, rather than these blanket correlations.
Your sun sign or whether Mercury's in retrograde won't actually affect you. But that doesn't mean astrology has no value. Astrology can tell us a lot about how natural rhythms affect our health. It can help us reflect on our relationships and on the way we make decisions. And for what it's worth, it can help people feel connected with ancient history and the universe. Astrology isn't science, but maybe that's the wrong way to think about it.
That is the wrong way to think about it. Sorry. All right, so that's that video. Shout out to Quartz for at least having the conversation or whatnot. Big up to them. But yeah, it was some fair points being made in this particular video and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna go too hard on them and whatnot. But again, it's this Western astrology kind of supremacy, Western supremacy or whatnot. That's kind of muddying the waters, but it did mention a good point about, the medical system and science is starting to open up a little bit more in regards to finding ways to try to predict health issues and stuff like that. Like, with DNA, they're looking at the DNA and being able to try to project what kind of health issues you can have down the line based on your DNA and different things like that. And all of that mindset, that ability to do that does come from astrology. But astrology doesn't need to be thrown away either, right? You just need to use an accurate system, and or work with a very competent astrologer or whatnot to be able to do this the right way. All right. So that's been today's reaction. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell or whatnot, and so you can know when the next video is dropping and everything. And make sure you always tune in to our live show with Brother Ra or whatnot. And Ra probably do some of these reactions as well or whatnot. We'll do some of these together or whatnot. But we got the season 5, pumping out. We're almost done there. So thank you all for tuning in, and we are out. Peace.